Action fanatics, welcome to another edition of the Bulletproof podcast. I'm your host, Chris the Brain. Joining me once again, it is the Toyman, Chris DePetrillo.
Back in action, not Roddy Piper, not Billy Blanks. It's Richard Norton night here on the podcast, and I'm happy to be along with you two gentlemen.
And yes, the two in the gentleman is Ryan Campbell.
Yes, and I apologize in advance. This is a rough night to do this. There is so much going on, Brain. Star Wars Celebration in Japan, because it's in Japan, is pretty much happening as we speak. We already have a brand new movie with Ryan Gosling in it. We got dates for like Mandalorian and the shit is being announced as we speak. So if I'm not quite paying attention, we also got a Fantastic Four trailer today. New toys announced. Like it's been a heck of a day.
It has been. And my wallet's already crying about some of the wrestling figures that were announced as we record this. It was the Thursday before WrestleMania, so we do not have any knowledge of what's actually happened at WrestleMania. But that's all right, because we're not a wrestling podcast, despite the fact that we somehow always mention wrestling on the podcast, including people like the Canadian giant Gary Robbins.
I was going to say, is that who Randy Orton's opponent's going to be?
Early. I don't think Randy Orton will be taking on Gary Robbins. Same reason why I don't think Umaga will be taking on Randy Orton.
That's what you put your bets on.
I did have Umaga on my WrestleMania card, but that's because, it could be I'm getting up there in age and the mind starts playing tricks on you. But yeah, we are here to talk about Richard Norton, who we sadly lost late last month, March 29th to be exact. So this will be our very special tribute to Richard Norton. But before we get into that, I want to talk about bulletproofaction.com. Toyman, you just wrapped up the Daredevil Born Again Season 1. And I heard that Season 2 will be like a year from now. They've already got it ready to...
Yeah, Season 2. Yeah, it's currently in production. And if the Season 1 is any indication, just, give it to me. Inject it right into my veins. That was just an excellent, excellent show. I've made mention on the podcast before when we talked about me covering it, and when I covered the first two episodes, when I covered the premiere, the original Born Again story, one of my favorite stories of all time, sentimental favorite of mine. I knew that this was, basically taking title only from that story. But what they did, it amazed me that they pushed the limits as much as they did in some ways. But fantastic performances from Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, just as Daredevil and Kingpin. It's going to be a while before they get replaced, and I don't know if anyone could ever measure up to the job that they're doing, because it's just been phenomenal.
And Ryan Campbell, you have covered, as we record, the first episode of The Last of Us, which I know you were very excited about. How did you feel now after seeing the premiere?
It picked up right where it left off. Fantastic. So exciting. It's been a while since I played the game. So of course, watching it just starts getting the mind running of I forgot how much happens in that game. And I guess it makes sense why they already announced the season 3. So I'm assuming we're not going to get all of the second game in this season, but man, and so season 2 does a lot of flashbacks, and they've already kind of messed a little bit with the sequencing of some of them, which is extremely interesting in how the rest of the season is going to play out. But yeah, fantastic first episode. By the time you're listening to this, the second one should already be up on the website. So really excited. It's going to be great.
Also, as this drops the day before, we had a special guest columnist. I want to thank Andrew for sharing with us his essential episodes for Walker, Texas Ranger.
How many episodes are there of Walker, Texas Ranger?
It's north of 100, I'm pretty sure.
It's one of those things I remember just being around a lot growing up, but I don't know if it was syndicated or new episodes or reruns or kind of what was going on.
It was on for quite a while. You know what else hit the site yesterday? It is my latest passion project. Maybe not many of you will care, but I enjoyed putting it together. And it is a living and breathing thing that will be updated as needed, because yesterday I launched Count the Bastards.
This has been in the running for a long time.
This has been in the works.
And you can now go to bulletproofaction.com and check out the Count the Bastards link, and you will see the 10 movies that have double-digit bastards that I have discovered so far. But I'm never going to stop looking, folks. I'm going to keep going. There's a lot of kung fu movies out there that I have not even tapped into, and you never know, they could pop up anywhere. So Count the Bastards.
We need to do some brainstormings. I feel like this is ripe to be some more YouTube
I wanted to
content
talk
that
to
we
you
can-
about that, sir, and we will talk off air.
All right. It seems prime
It's-
for expanding
it's
our
prime, all right.
repertoire.
So that also yesterday as this drops. But let's talk about some things coming up. Andor's coming up, Ryan Campbell. The first, 3 episodes drop this week.
Yeah, it's gonna be a beast the way they're doing the uploads with like 3 episodes at a time. It kind of works because the series kind of does like 3 episode arcs, so the season is kind of split up into mini arcs. But I don't know, it's gonna be a lot to take in. So you're definitely gonna want, my watch alongs and my observation guides to kind of help make sure you don't miss out on something. Because that's one thing I don't like about doing it this way is I feel like there's gonna be a lot of like little moments that you could really reflect on if you're watching them 1 episode a week, but it's going to get kind of lost in the shuffle of, the season coming out so fast. But really excited for it. It looks like it's going to be fantastic. They're putting a lot of, weight and marketing behind it. So it's going to be pretty great.
Yeah, some late Tuesday nights coming up for Ryan over the next 4 weeks.
Well, at least half of it, though, is credits. Like the way Disney does that, they released all the episode times. But if anyone who's watched the Disney Plus shows knows, for whatever reason, the credits are like 15 minutes long.
There you go.
They do them in every language. Right. They run for just like 10 minutes after the episode ends. So,
all right. Well, then maybe it won't be as late as I thought. Netflix is going to be dropping Bullet Train Explosion and the Tom Hardy movie Havoc this week as well. So I'll be on top of those.
We love our Netflix reviews.
So that's all coming up as we try to finish April strong with some of this new content and some classic stuff, again, like the Walker Texas Ranger list. And, of course, Count the Bastards has some certified classics on it. All right, guys, let's get into it now. Richard Norton, the great Richard Norton. One of the great things about Richard Norton, Toyman, how versatile he was. I mean, he could be the hero. He could be the villain. He could be a sidekick. He could just have a small part. He was also a great stuntman. I mean, this man could do whatever you needed him to do in the world of action entertainment.
A truly versatile performer, truly a jack of all trades. I mean, I became familiar with him from films like China O'Brien, the type of stuff that we've talked about many times. Please check that out on the YouTube channel or on bulletproofaction.com. The special China O'Brien 1 and 2 podcast link is out there for your listening pleasure. But, when we watched them, we were mentioning some of the films that we could possibly cover. I know that there's one that I tend to enjoy that is a little bit further down on your list, Ironheart, which we had put up there. But here we got Equalizer 2000, which is a film that I had not watched in quite a while. And I believe you covered it maybe like back during COVID.
Yeah.
Probably a couple of years ago.
It was a couple of years since I had watched it. And I will say this about Ironheart. I was not a fan of the movie, but when I was like checking to see if these, what movies were easily available, so all 3 of us could easily watch it and don't have to be like, oh, do you have, Ryan, don't you have this on Blu-ray? Like we know that's not going to happen. But I started watching a little bit of Ironheart.
Is that why we can't do the director's cut of American Samurai?
Correct. Yes. But Ironheart has one of the greatest opening songs in the history of cinema. So just for that alone, I may have to give it a complete rewatch. And maybe my thoughts on it will be different because I did not care for it many years ago when I watched it. But yeah, this one, Equalizer 2000, some post-apocalyptic action. We haven't had too much of that on the podcast. This one hit video stores on May 21st, 1987. And once again, this man is back on the show. Cirio H. Santiago was the director, Chris.
We can't get away from him. We were talking the April Fool's Day podcast about Black Belt 2 Fatal Force, aka Spider, aka several other movies,
AKA
cut and
shit.
pasted into one. And let's not forget that the previous No Surrender Cinema, before I covered Daredevil Born Again season one, was Angel of
Yeah.
Destruction, again by our pal Cirio, taking the very same formula that he used in Black Belt, well, that Roger Corman used in Black Belt 1, just gender swapping the hero and producing another low budget, I don't know if you'd call it an action epic, but that one was much to your point about Ironheart. Angel of Destruction was a little bit more enjoyable than I had remembered it being.
uh, people, if, and I'm going to tell you this, this is not the plan right now for Actionversary, but if people would pay attention to certain things, you would know what like the big Actionversary post was going to be each year, because earlier in the year you see a bunch of like the new image year. I was like watching new image stuff all the time, and probably putting the reviews up here and there, and like then we did a new image countdown. But there's no plan of doing a Cirio H Santiago countdown, at least not yet.
There you go.
Not until you just put that in the universe.
Uh,
You spoke it
I
into
may
existence,
have
Brain.
done it.
It might have to be next year because Brain's got some long-term
I don't
booking
have much
going
for
on,
this
as
year, to
always.
be quite honest.
Oh no!
We hit that 10-year mark, and I was like,
People on the internet are going to get on us that we're
Yeah,
not planning
we're
this out and hyping it up
you're right.
enough.
I'm sorry. You want to know something though? If the internet wanted a movie to start with a rotating giant gun, do I have the movie for them? It's called Equalizer 2000. So they tease this gun, Brian Campbell, right from Jump Street.
Who doesn't love a giant rotating gun, especially in an environment where, bullets are pretty much the standard currency. Mm-hmm. That's power is bullets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get some opening credits after the gun. We get some narration. All of this is taking place in North Alaska, 100 years after nuclear winter. Apparently there is nuclear waste that just got burned away by the blistering sun, and now the world is just one big desert. And in control of things, or at least what's left of things, is the ownership. But as
you can tell they're bad by their black.
Yeah, they wear all black. Correct.
Yeah.
They have a flag.
They're kind of Nazi-esque look.
And when you have a big, powerful group like that, it's only natural that some people are not going to go along with it. So there is a rebellion brewing.
And they are recognized by their camouflage green aesthetic.
They are.
So very much got to commit to the bit on these, Brain, and make it easy for anybody to just sit down and know what the heck's going on.
I would agree with you. And again, I have seen this movie before. But then it started, and we get this firefight, and you got the guys in the black, and you got the camo guys, but then you had you had the one guy in black, who's Lawton, just like not doing it, and I'm like, wait, whose side is he on? Why is he not? And I forgot he was the asshole in this movie. But yeah, what did you think about this opening fight scene, or battle, really, Chris? It doesn't waste any time getting right to the action.
It's almost like the start of like an A-Team episode. It's kind of like you have this vague idea of who the good guys and bad guys are. If it were me, I would have thought that the rebels should be the guys in gray, and the military took over, so the guys in the camo would make sense to be like deployed to eliminate the rebels. But we kind of flip-flopped here. I appreciate Cirio's attempt to market Australia as Alaska. It didn't really go over as well as when he uses the Philippines to be Hawaii. But yeah, this one kind of starts off a little bit confusing, kind of putting the pieces in place. Because remember, these are kind of our supporting cast too. We're not even introduced to the main character right away. He's thrust into the action a few moments in.
Yeah, he has a pretty sweet ride. He comes roaring in.
There are a few sweet rides in this. I will give them credit for being a VHS release or straight to home release. There seemed to be a lot of effort and care that went into. Of course, you can't talk about the movie without the elephant in the room being the Mad Max saga that kind of plays into a lot of the aesthetic of it. But you can tell that there was a lot of work that went into the vehicles specifically to make them look so pieced together and kit bashed and welded and all those
Well,
kinds of things. Really good job on those.
Chris, you said this was shot in Australia. I think that's just what the cars were like in the 80s in Australia. They all look like that.
Yeah, see, once Mad Max became a hit, that's what
Yeah.
all the dealerships were
They just
going for.
they didn't.
That or they just raided the back lot where they kept all the Mad Max
Could be too.
cars. There was some extras that got cut from the
Mhm.
film, and they just took them.
So
There was a random truck though that's just a normal truck that we're going to see later. There's like you have all these like grungy vehicles and rust and blades and spikes, and then there's just like a random ass
I like
truck
the
driving around.
car that had like United States Air Force stenciled on the door.
Yes.
And I was like, why would the Air Force ever have that particular vehicle?
So my thought would be, in the wake of the initial nuclear war fallout, perhaps they, couldn't fly planes, or for whatever reason, they all had blown up or they didn't have any. So they were just like marking vehicles that they had around and trying to put things together. And then eventually, of course, all of society just kind of collapsed and whatever. But that's my headcanon for that. I did think about that as well.
So yeah, when Slade comes roaring in, we find out it's his dad who is the commanding officer of the ownership troops. So he's like, oh, he's got to help his dad, obviously. And what the rebels are going after is oil. It's the oil that belonged to the ownership. So after all this, the bullets are done flying, the smoke is cleared, they blow up the whole oil thing. Slade's dad is dead. Slade is wounded, ends up getting taken captive by the rebels, and Lawton is like, this is all what he was hoping for, Chris. This is what this bastard wanted.
Yeah, this is his way to oust Slade. He sees him as a threat. He doesn't want him or doesn't trust him, doesn't think that he's gonna be a good loyal servant or anything. So he's like, hey, he's a turncoat. Like, we got to get rid of this guy.
Chaos is a ladder.
And yeah, so Slade's out. Lawton's like, oh yeah, he's no good. So if you ever see him, go fuck yourself. No, don't do that. The rebels now believe they've got Slade and like, oh, this is good. This, he could be a bargaining chip for us dealing with the ownership. And there's a guy, I'll tell you what, Fletcher. I wonder if he's related to Jessica. But Fletcher, he tries so very hard to organize all these little colonies and whatnot, and he gets turned down left and right, Ryan Campbell. But the man keeps going.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. Organization is key to any rebellion. You can only do so much when you're a bunch of isolated cells. To bring back Andor, that's kind of one of the key plot points overarching that getting into Rogue One is like the rebellion being these like small pockets, and you've got these kind of politicians that are still kind of hoping to kind of do it the right way, and then finally kind of coming to the realization. So, part of getting everybody together and getting everybody on the same page is kind of key to forming some sort of actual resistance, and that's what he's trying to do.
So they apparently don't have like cells at this rebel camp, so they just like tie Slade to the front of a car or a truck
with, I guess, the loosest rope ever, because his technique to get out is not exactly
Houdini-ish.
Yeah, he's not like breaking his thumb to get out of a tight way or something crazy. He just kind of keeps jabbing his arm forward till eventually it comes out.
Persistence sometimes pays off. So yeah, the next morning Slade gets loose, he gets in a car, and we get a car chase with a very realistic gorge jump. Wouldn't you say, Chris? Wasn't that very realistic?
I mean, where else are you going to find something like that except in a Cirio H. Santiago film?
Yeah, you're right.
We'll just put it that way, folks.
I just think of Homer Simpson on the skateboard.
What was that?
When I hear gorge jump, I just think of Homer Simpson on the skateboard.
and then falling down on the stretcher afterwards.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, this worked out better for Slade than it did poor Homer. And then we cut to the post-exchange, and we see a familiar face. in a very early role. It's Deke, played by Robert Patrick,
who we just mentioned on the John Cena Sr. podcast when we were talking about the Marine.
indeed. And the Marine
And
episode
for those
got put up on our YouTube channel. So if you didn't want to check it out in the classic podcast archives, you could check it out on our YouTube channel.
That's right. One of the ones we are actively trying to get old ones up and the rest of 2025 up. And yeah, we're getting out there as fast as we can. So go check it out.
But for those who have never seen the Marine and don't recognize the name, which if you don't recognize the name Robert Patrick at this point, shame on you. Ladies and gentlemen, the T-1000 from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. That's how you would know this man. Several years prior, this was about 5 years prior to that film. And, here he's a role that he would, pretty much embrace many times in his career. He's the shithead heel of the story.
I also love we keep coming back to the aesthetics because that is kind of key to the branding of the movie. This group is all over the place. You've got dude in like Civil War era, like hat and jacket. You've got a guy who's just like gold prospector outfit. You've got all kinds. Everyone's just doing because they're not part of any particular group. They're all just doing their own thing. They just raided the wardrobe department and brought out whatever.
Yeah, they're like
find.
the dreadnoughts.
The guy with the aviator glasses.
Ryan, did you recognize Alamo, Ryan Campbell?
I did, and because you just asked me this a few weeks ago. He was in Black Belt 2. But when you asked about it during the Black Belt 2 podcast, it was because American Ninja.
Right. But here he is, old Henry Strzelkowski.
Just keeps coming back.
He is a Cirio favorite. So yeah, they're there and they're waiting on Karen. They've got a deal they've cut with Karen where it's like a can of gas for a crate of rockets.
I can tell you what, all these people must have read The Art of the Deal because they all just they don't get shit out of this entire exchange.
So, Karen arrives, but then Deke decides like he's freaking Darth Vader to alter the deal. And she better pray he doesn't alter it more. But instead, Karen's like, no way, I'm going to pull a gun and say quite a line. Perhaps the line of the movie. And it is, I'd like to blow you guys right here.
I'm going to assume
those guys are a little bit too eager. They didn't pick up on the metaphor, or the entendre, if you will.
Maybe in the 100 years of nuclear winter that existed, I'm going to assume that some stuff was lost in translation over those 100 years. We're just going to go with that, I guess.
Ryan Campbell's just working his ass off.
Yeah, because we might as well just get this out of the way early on. For a Cirio H. Santiago movie, this was pretty tame with the sexuality.
I was shocked when we get to a scene a bit later on how tame it was. I'm like, wait a minute now. But that's all right. So Karen ends up taking Alamo hostage. She drives off with the rockets and the gas. She gets it all. At least temporarily. Once she gets some distance between herself and Alamo's boys, she's like, Alamo, get the hell out of this car. But Deke and the company, they're catching up. So we get ourselves another chase scene. Karen,
I love the dialogue that's going on throughout the chase scene because like all the crew, they're just like given direction, but they were given like one thing to say, so they just keep saying it over and over again. It's like get her, get her, get her, get her, get her, whoa! And then one's going just like whoa, and the other one's going like bitch, you bitch. Bet you, I just keep going for the entire like
dubbing the line or repeating the dubbed lines.
Yeah, they're just racking it back and forth.
And he like macheted one of the gas cans on her car because they got that close. They were so close. But yeah, they were too busy calling her a bitch. Karen sacrifices her vehicle at some point and then just, I'm gonna go out on foot because that seems sensible. And then Deke and the boys are like, it's feet you've chosen, and they get on there, but they get real. They start sounding rapey. Did they sound rapey to you guys?
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, they had that Cretanish vibe to them
Yeah.
anyway. So it would have made sense that if they, got her where they wanted her, they could certainly try to have their
And
way with
later
her.
we see that deep. Yeah, it tracks. Uh,
Yeah, and also could just be we've seen enough of these movies to know how this
oh, it's
goes.
horrible. But you know what's not horrible for Karen is that Slade is nearby, and he hears all this commotion,
What a small wasteland,
and
Brain.
and he gets in and he just starts shooting at Deke and his guys, which then puts them in retreat mode. But he's injured. We got to remember he's still injured. They did not, they weren't following the rules of like the Geneva Convention when they took him prisoner. I think you have to treat people wounds before you just tie him up to the front of a car.
I mean, we don't do it now, so I doubt they did in whatever dystopian future this is. So,
and that I guess is more impressive that he escaped while not even 100%. Imagine if he was 100%, he probably would have never even been tied up.
And to Ryan's point too about the way that they were shouting in the car and stuff like that, wasn't it the scene where Slade is shooting at them, and it might have even been Alamo, our friend from Black Belt 2 there, Henry, where he's like, "Hey, up yours, man!" Like, this is purportedly an R-rated action
Yeah.
movie, and we're getting Simpsons level insults as these guys are being fired upon by the hero of the story.
Was Cirio trying to? Was this supposed to appeal to like kids? Like, oh, you like your Mad Max? We've got something for you, kids.
I mean, it is pretty
I mean, did
tame.
we
I would not have
mistakenly
thought it
watch
was
the
rated R.
edited for television version? Did we watch the broadcast TV version?
What broadcaster was showing this? I don't know. So yeah, Karen's like, okay, who the hell was this guy that saved me? And she finds he's badly injured, so she loads him into the car that he took from the rebels, and she's like, I'm gonna take him back to my colony. And Karen's father is in charge of it, Dixon. And Fletcher shows up over there, and not knowing that they're harboring the prisoner that they captured earlier. And Fletcher gets turned down, as I mentioned. It's a running theme for the poor man. But you know who does join up? We get Deke and Alamo and all those boys. They end up getting recruited by the ownership after they stooge on seeing Slade with Karen. So they know where Slade is, and Lawton wants to make sure Slade is completely eliminated.
I think in pirate terms they call that being shanghaied, isn't that what that is? Where you're kind of or just kind of pressured into service, really given the option of either death or join the crew kind of thing.
I'm only aware of Shanghai Pierce and Tex Slash, but that's just me. And another reference.
It's an excellent reference.
Nice reference. So Karen is nursing Slade back to health. And eventually he does get better, and he starts just wandering around. And
that's just unaccompanied. They know that he's former.
Because he's all in black. He's ownership. The man in black.
Yeah, yeah. They know that and some of them are even concerned about it, but I guess not concerned enough to keep an eye on him. I don't know. Or at least guard the weapons room.
He just wanders into the weapons room, and he sees the start of a massive gun.
Possible, I guess maybe I would say the protagonist of this movie is this gun.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's the Equalizer 2000. It's the titular character.
Yeah, it kind of, I guess, to go back to the Mad Max analogy, the thing about Max is none of the movies are ever really about him. It's always just kind of like he exists and the plots kind of happen around him, and he's just part of it, and then he carries off to the next thing. So yeah, I guess the Equalizer 2000 is the main character of this movie.
Dixon had noticed the tattoo that Slade had and knew where it would come from because Dixon served with Slade's father, and he's like, "Oh, how's your dad doing?" He's dead.
Womp womp.
And Slade's like, Lawton killed him, and I'm going to kill Lawton, basically. Now we meet some new characters, Chris, because the ownership is harassing the mountain people.
Did you notice another favorite of Mr. Cirio?
Oh, you're talking about Vic?
Yep, Mr. Vic Diaz on the side of good
Yeah.
for a
Well,
change,
he
because
was good in
the
Black
mountain
Belt.
people.
He was a hard ass police chief or captain.
Well, there was the tease that some of those cops were
Mm-hmm.
corrupt. It was kind of one of those like unfinished plot
That's
holes.
true. I
So,
think
I mean, that one I think you could chalk up as a wash.
okay. I usually feel like I want to wash after watching a Vic Diaz appearance for some reason. But yeah, he's there. He plays Bone.
How come everybody only has one name in the apocalypse?
There's no time. Got to be efficient. You have to really take your resources and make them stretch and make them work.
They
So
burned away with the scorching sun.
that's right.
Either their first name or your last name, which one of them you only had one. Or maybe Vince McMahon's in charge and said everybody's just one name. I don't know.
Well, that's like, her name is Karen, so is it
Yeah.
like Karen Jones, or is it like
Or
Donna
is she
Karen?
Karen
Like,
Dixon? And they just
or is she Karen
call her
Dixon?
dad Dixon by his
And-
last name, but his real name, his full name is like Dan Dixon.
Right, and like, is Slade because his first name is really like Elmer? Like, you can't have a hero named Elmer Slade. You
Right,
just got to be Slade at that
right.
point.
Yeah, but he's young enough to have been born in the wasteland. So he is post fall born. So a name like
Post-Fallout
Slade.
baby.
Yeah. So a name like Slade kind of works in the wasteland for the wasteland babies.
If it wasn't for
Karen maybe not
Fallout
so
Boy, that
much.
would be a great band name. Post-Fallout baby would be a great band name.
There's also the chief of the mountain people's named Firewall.
That's a good name.
Yeah.
Was he like their
we're gonna see Fire Rock
technological expert? He was their computer expert. See, because this is in the future,
Right.
so even though we hadn't hit that point in society
Yeah.
yet, he must have been like
He was the IT
their
guy.
systems
Yeah,
analyst.
he was the IT guy, and he's smart. He finally gets his chance to be the boss, and he loves it. But yeah, the ownership, they're like, hey, we're messing with you. And Farrell's like, you take a message back. You tell them to go fuck themselves. They don't say that, but they say it.
Right, because remember, this is clean Cirio today.
And the minion goes and tells Lawton, and he just gets killed. He's like, don't kill the messenger. That's not a rule that Lawton follows. He doesn't follow a lot of rules. He definitely doesn't follow that one. So go back to the colony. Now we get a Slade working on the gun montage. He doesn't have a shirt on, I'm pretty sure. And Norton was like fucking lean and ripped in this movie.
The thickest sweat.
Mm-hmm.
Just those shots of the giant beads of sweat rolling down.
Yeah.
Gun porn.
Mm-hmm. And
again, very A-teamish.
Yep.
The whole, working with what's at hand, making weapons out of what you've got at your disposal.
Maybe Cirio was watching a bunch of A-Team. Maybe he thought this could be a series.
Mad Max meets the A-Team. I mean, I'd be down.
Ownership now shows up, and they're looking for the deserter, and they're looking for those damn rockets. But Dixon is not interested.
We're gonna find them both
in
here
helping.
in a minute.
And then he's like, "What?" And then, and they're like, "Okay, we're going to give you 30 seconds." And what they end up getting is the first taste of the Equalizer 2000. An amazing gun that never needs to be reloaded at any time. It just keeps shooting rockets and bullets.
Not just that,
Like
they
that
make the most
infinite
amazing
fire glitch.
sound. They got this whistle sound. It's like when the rockets come out, and which is the second. There's also in the opening. We didn't touch on this in the opening battle when they're using
I know
the
what you're gonna
grenade
say.
launchers. That audio is really
Yes,
good as well.
the mortars.
Well, the
they come
grenade
out-
launchers that look like potato guns.
Yes, and it comes out like whoop, like that sound, and then the whistle sound of the rockets. Those are some great audio cues. I'd love to know what they put together to get those distinct sounds, but those jumped out to me. And of course, we hear a lot of it because, like you said, Brain, this thing is firing rockets left and right.
Never has to reload. There's just a bazillion of them.
It's like in the video game when you get the high-end weapon at the very end, and then you reload a new game and get to keep it through the entire time, and you're just super overpowered for the entire thing.
So you're saying that Slade prestiged?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or for Brain, it'd be like you used your red bricks to buy like this really power up, and now you're going back and doing the original levels to get all the mini kits.
Thank you for dumbing it down to my level. So Dixon's like, oh, I got to get my people to safety. All right, you do that. I'll hold these bastards off because I got the Equalizer 2000. But Karen is like, ooh, I don't want to leave this man's side. So she stays there. And then the Equalizer 2000 goes mobile because she's driving and Slade's in the thing. Oh, my God. Beautiful.
When he is legit standing on the hood and like not budging at all was one of the most badass things I think I've ever seen in a movie, period. Like that and like the Jean-Claude Van Damme splits between the two trucks. Like it's up there with that. Like he doesn't flinch. Like I'm sure he was wired up and there's some other stuff that maybe they took out. But I mean, this isn't like nowadays where they can have this huge giant rig and then they can all digitally take it out. They still had to be really discreet. So even if he is wired up or something, it had to be pretty minor because the budget and everything else to take that. So he straight stands on his hood and that car is moving left and right and driving over this rocky terrain and he doesn't fucking budge. It's amazing.
Got that martial arts balance. He's a freaking ninja.
To the point, like, did they just like screw a mannequin to it or something? Is it like a double? But I'm pretty sure it looked like him firing that gun.
Baby. Richard Norton was the man. So later that night, after all that, Lawton's like, God, now I want that gun. But later, Slade and Karen, after they've kicked some ass and kind of drew the bad guys away, return, and they find that Deke is there, and now he has Dixon. And of all the people to get the gun and Karen, Chris, it's Deke.
Yeah, he's gotten everything he wanted, so I guess we could just end the movie right here, right? No. The bad guys win, it's all done.
No, that's not how these movies work. Deke and Alamo then start having a falling out, Ryan. And I don't know if I realize how or why they had this. Did anyone else catch? Ryan, did you catch why? What was the point of contention?
I think it's just one of those like Megatron Starscream scenarios where there's always a little bit of a back and forth about who is the leader, who wants to be the leader. And Deke sees it as his opportunity to really just, lay claim and take ownership, but it's not going to go so good for him. Alamo ends up tied up to a rock to die in the sun, and he's going to get a choice brain about how he wants to be cooked.
Here we go.
And in a few minutes, it's going to be either a slow roast or flash fried.
Amazing.
And I would be remiss to not mention Brain's notes about Alamo being tied to a rock to blister in the sun. That is an excellent Violent Femmes reference.
When I wrote it, I then had the YouTube open like instantaneously because it just popped in my head. And then probably listened to it on repeat until I was done with my notes. Fletcher, let's go back to Fletcher before we cook Alamo. Fletcher has now gone to the mountain people, and Chief Firewall and Bone tell him
he's just going door to door.
Tell him to hit the bricks, and he has to. So now at this point, to what Ryan was talking about, the ownership finds Alamo tied to the rock, and they give him his options. Deke has made it back to the post exchange, and he's definitely now. There's no like, is he being rapey? No, he's definitely being rapey now. He takes Karen off to the back of the place, and he's all on top of her. But once again, Slade is there to rescue her.
And we have to bring it back up. One of the more tame rape scenes we've ever seen on the Bulletproof podcast.
Again, this was.
It's basically just him fully clothed, like, rubbing on top of her. And now let's not also mention, I'm sorry, let's also mention that not only is this an R-rated Cirio H. Santiago film, but Karen is played by a former Penthouse Pet of the Month.
Ooh, what month?
So this is
year?
Not a woman who,
RTG would have had this information and the
What is the
measurements.
IMDb?
Hold
Is
on.
there an IMDb for?
I believe it was like
Oh,
1978 or 79.
okay.
So
Hold
this
on, I'm going to
is
check it right now.
almost 10 years later. This is her trying to get that passed
Oh,
away.
okay. So I was half right. She was a two-time pet of the month
Okay.
in June of 78
Oh,
and August of
she's
81,
back, baby.
and she was the 82 pet of the
Oh, she
year.
deserved it. Yeah.
Ooh,
Congratulations.
peak. That was the peak.
Yeah,
that was her prime.
congratulations,
So this is post prime.
Yeah.
And maybe she's trying to like lay the groundwork to then really get this acting career
Yeah.
going, but she's still using that sexuality to kind of get her foot in the door, but she wants to show you that that's not her anymore, Brain.
You're right. Well, yeah, Deke was trying to lay the pipe, but he didn't get that done because Slade comes in. But what I found most interesting about this whole scene is that Colt 45 survived the nuclear apocalypse.
Pretty pristine too. Like that's not like a Colt 45 that was in a fridge for 100 years. Like that means that there's some other faction somewhere that set up in a Colt 45 bottling facility, and that's what they're using to exchange for fuel and bullets.
It works every time.
It probably wasn't the same without Billy D as the spokesperson.
No, it wasn't. But Slade does get Karen out. However, Lawton shows up and he gets the Equalizer 2000. And
now I'm going to throw this out there.
Do it.
Because it was something that struck me while rewatching this. Doesn't Lawton look like what happened to Cameron from Ferris Bueller once his dad found out about the car?
That's oddly specific.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like, but if you look at his features, he kind of has similar features to Alan Ruck, but being like this evil, disgruntled, grizzled wannabe overlord, it's almost like that's where his life turned. Like once the apocalypse hit, he's like, "Fuck this shit, fuck my friends. I'm just gonna go kill everybody."
Here's a fun fact: Alan Ruck went to my high school.
Ah, that's interesting.
Obviously, well before.
Did you take a day off?
Well before I went to the school, but he was probably our most famous graduate, I would assume, until now because of me hosting this program.
Did his dad own a Ferrari?
I don't. Again, this was well before my time there at the school. But yeah, Alan Ruck, Parmesan. So yeah, we've got Lawton. He kills Deke, then blows up the post exchange just because he can, because he's got a freaking gun that has unlimited rockets. Why the hell wouldn't you try? It's like when it's really like in RoboCop when they get those guns and it's like, oh, what do these things do? And they just start blowing the shit out of the entire street. What a freaking movie that is, huh? Anyway,
we should cover that.
We already have.
That one's not on the YouTube channel though.
We'll get there.
Maybe it is if it's from old enough.
Yeah, you never know. You never know what when Chad was in charge. You never knew what the hell was going up there. So yeah, Lawton then goes back to Ownership HQ, and he's like, and the current leader is McCain, and he's like, oh, I got this gun that I told you about, and then he kills everybody except his guys, and he takes over. McCain tries to get away, he gets killed, and Lawton's plan now, Chris, is complete. He's got everything he wanted.
He's got the hostile takeover. He's got the Equalizer 2000. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, I created this thing for protection, but it's not really serving its purpose in the wrong hands now, is it?
Right. And now here is the scene where I really was taken aback because Slade and Karen in the night by the fire. Did they have a fire? Something. They had the fire going. They were there. The next day, Slade was going to go off and kill Lawton. But beforehand, Ryan Campbell, he was going to have a little sexy time with Karen.
That's right. You don't know if you're coming back. You're going out to equal a vendetta. You don't know if you're going to come back, so you better come tonight.
Oh,
so he is. And Karen, I don't know how to put this delicately, has really been presenting her assets throughout the entire movie with very low cut tops,
Yep.
So you're like, all right,
Yeah.
it's all been built
We're
into
gonna see it.
this.
Right.
The hand goes up to the strap of the tube top. That's right. Yep. And then that's the cross dissolve away. That's the end of the scene.
Yeah, those straps come down a bit, but you don't see it. I was shocked, I say. So the next day,
family friendly.
Where did they get the R? They must have like bribed the ratings board to get the R rating. At this point,
do we know it was R rated? What does IMDb say?
That's a great question.
Let's see here.
Who can race faster.
Well, I have it. Well, I have the Henry Star.
Well, there's actually an alternate version.
Ooh.
The US R-rated version, published by MGM United Artists on VHS,
MGM.
is about 10 minutes cut.
Oh.
In a few shorter scenes of violence.
I think, is that
the German VHS version rated 18 is cut as well for violence.
Okay.
The British VHS version rated 18 is completely uncut.
What?
So it is considered an unrated version.
That's bizarre. Usually the UK was the one cutting all kinds of stuff. You couldn't even have ninjas.
Yeah, all the video nasties and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
I don't understand. The world doesn't, it's never made sense. It certainly doesn't make sense now, but this is proof that it never really made sense.
Well, IMDb here says it's an hour and 25 and has it rated R, which I'm assuming is the Tubi version because it was about an hour and 25 minutes. So I'm assuming that the Tubi version was rated rated R version.
Yeah. Well,
I know the YouTube version because it's free on YouTube was rated R.
Yeah, I did watch it on YouTube. Yeah. Well, you know what? This is where we need like the Vinegar Syndromes of the world, or that this really does seem like a Vinegar Syndrome type release, where they'd have different versions, and but I'm surprised there's not.
But what's sad is we will not get an official commentary from Richard Norton. That's the sad thing.
Or Cirio Santiago for that matter, but
yeah, also.
Somebody could put out a Cirio box set, honestly. Or several. It would be like the Shaw Brothers collections. You could just keep pumping those things out because he made a lot of movies. So yeah, Sexy Time was not as graphic as one would expect. But the next day, Slade and Kieran go back to the colony, and Dixon's like, you know what? We decided to join up with the rebellion after all.
Finally, he got some people.
And come on, you got to join up too, Slade. And no, this is just personal. I'm not into the politics of all this. I'm going to go do my thing.
That just so happens to really closely align with the thing you guys are doing.
You're right. And he goes off on his own, but instantly sees the ownership once again harassing the mountain people, and once again Slade does what Slade does, and he intervenes. And now we see the full assault is about to happen. All the rebel forces are together now, and the ownership hears them. They're coming. Battle stations, classic. Everybody gets to their battle stations, and Ryan Campbell, we get this big battle.
Yeah, and we get everyone kind of wandering out of the wilderness because it is a desert, not a lot of cover. So everyone just kind of here they come. But then we do get, they've fortified themselves with kind of some rock cover around the compound, so for protection. But here at Brain, it kind of serves as their undoing, as the mountain people have descended from the mountains. And it reminds me of almost the Battle of Helm's Deep. They show up on the tops of silhouetted by the blazing sun, and they pull out all their sticks and bows and arrows, and they have everyone surrounded, and that turns the tide of the battle.
Well, that was a much. I was just going to say the mountain people were like human Ewoks, but you said it.
That also
you
works
said
as
it
well.
Much better, Ryan Campbell, and I'm surprised. I'm the one with the Star Wars reference. Slade does get into the headquarters, and of course he's looking for Lawton. And then pretty soon, all the rebels are pouring into this place too, including Karen. Poor Karen, Chris. Come on now.
Yeah, just when you think that, her and Slade, it's going to be their happily ever after, they're going to take down the forces of evil. Nope, it's up to Slade because I don't know if I can call it the love of his life, but the love of the apocalypse is gunned
Right, the
down.
love of the past 24 hours. Yeah, and it's like they didn't really like Lawton didn't need any more heat. He had enough heat on him. But
Yeah, that was
yeah.
overkill, no pun intended.
Oh. So we do get our Lawton versus Slade battle, Ryan Campbell.
Maybe it's it to again keep bringing back the Mad Maxness of it all. Is Max kind of works best when he is the loner that just constantly can't stay out of the shit, and everyone he touches, gets hurt. So maybe that's what they were. If they had ideas of a sequel, maybe that was part of what played into this to kind of, make him even more isolated and jaded a little bit. But yeah, it did seem like a little kind of out of place what they were kind of building towards.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that the final battle between Lawton and Slade is anything to write home about. Uh,
No, but at least in the final few minutes, we actually get some
right,
hand-to-hand combat from Richard
right.
Norton because, again, we know him from, the China O'Briens, Lady Dragon, Rage and Honor, obviously some of the great Hong Kong films he made before he made his mark in American cinema. And really, it's more about the gunplay and the firefights than any type of martial arts or even fisticuffs.
Well, yeah,
I do kind of like when movies do like the close quarters thing though of how you would like that anticipation and that anxiety when it's a closed open area and the bad guy gets the gun. Like what would you do? And he takes a shot to kind of like the abdomen and then kind of ninja rolls, like does some serpentine moves to try to get to some cover. So there is like a little bit of that kind of anxiety building in that very close quarters hallway that they're fighting in that we get to see here, which I always kind of like that kind of those kind of moves.
when it's all done, we get really a. I don't know if this was a message that Cirio was trying to send to the world, but Slade comes out. He's got the Equalizer 2000 back in his possession.
Which came to save him.
Yeah,
I mean, the gun's not sentient, but it pretty much just came to his aid in
yeah.
the end there.
But then what does he do? He destroys the Equalizer 2000.
With a tear in his eye.
And he throws the pieces down, and everybody else is watching. They're like, "Whoa, you're right." And they start throwing their weapons down. Because war, what is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
And then Slade drives off. And then the end credits. Ryan Campbell, I have to believe this was your first time watching this movie. What are your final thoughts?
You would be correct. I enjoyed it. I do feel like there was a lot left on the table story wise. I love the premise. The idea, it's a kind of a very like format that fits into a lot of different genres. You could see it easily being like a samurai movie of the shogun warrior that gets left for dead and then is taken care of by the villagers and then turns to the good side to help them fight the dynasty. Or it could be a Western movie where the gunman who's part of the crew, the evil crew, helps the small town. Like we've seen this kind of play out before. I think it's a tried and true, but I think it works. And I love the idea of like the protagonist or the hero starting out as the bad guys before kind of realizing that he was one of the baddies and changing his ways. But I feel like there was a lot more meat on that bone that the movie didn't quite get to, and it spends a lot of time in some of these battle scenes that just go on too long, where there's constant explosions and people just kind of returning fire back and forth that we could have maybe used a little bit more character moments. But all in all, for what it is, I enjoyed it. But yeah, I think there's a little bit more meat on that bone, Brain.
Toyman.
It's been a while since I've watched this one. Again, this would not have been my first choice for Richard Norton, but we've got to do our readers and our listeners justice because this is what won the poll. To Ryan's point, for a movie that's not dull, like it doesn't really slow down. There are points where it feels like it's dragging just because of the repetition. It seems like every few minutes it's just more of the same thing, whether it's a fight, it's a chase, they've got Karen, they've got Slade. It's like Cirio had 15 minutes worth of plot and he just played it over and over again into an hour and a half movie. So, I don't hate it by any means, but this one, sadly, I would have to put on the lower end of my Richard Norton list.
I mean, the gun is, as Ryan said, really the star of the movie. Anytime it's on the screen, I mean, it's a scene stealer. But yeah, I do like Norton in this. Uh, but again, I like Norton in so many of his roles. But this is a good example of his heroics. Uh,
That car scene will
yeah,
be in my
I mean,
head. Like I'll remember
that
that
is that
going
is the
forward.
scene of the movie right there. To what you had mentioned earlier, like the movie did not make good use of his martial arts skills, and that could be partially because who the hell was he going to fight? Like he would outclass everyone
Well, I
instantaneously.
mean, it would have been nice to
It
see
was his
though.
show too.
Well, and if you're trying to sell that like bullets are so scarce in this environment, that's a good way to show that is you have a built-in reason of why you would have more hand-to-hand combat is because they do have to be so sparing when they're using their guns. And then in maybe the beginning and the end, you have a lot of gunfire and explosions because it's kind of the two big battles. But in the middle, you could do a lot more hand-to-hand combat because they're trying to conserve as much ammo as possible. But they never, like you said, ammo is pretty much infinite for
Right.
everybody in this movie, not just the Equalizer
You know
2000.
what else must have?
Like, let's say the scene where he got, wounded or whatever like that, like maybe him and Karen take refuge where the mountain people are, and as he's healing, he's practicing, so they see him, punching a tree or kicking a rock or whatever like that. So then at the end, when you get that big battle, they're coming with like, this, newly discovered martial arts skill because they've been watching him and kind of like teaching themselves.
Hmm.
I also just would have loved to have seen more of his motivations because, like, clearly he has a moral compass. He saves multiple people that he doesn't need to for any reason, but it just kind of falls back to being like revenge as the only reason that he's even, helping anybody. Is just the revenge thing is the only thing that they really get back to. But again, to go back to it, I feel like they could have done a little bit more about his motivations and him kind of realizing the error and I'm guessing the years that he was brought up in this environment to kind of changes to his worldview and become the hero or even a reluctant hero. I just would have liked to have seen some more of that.
I would also like to point out that in addition to bullets and rockets being unlimited, obviously water was not an issue, or food, because these people they look healthy. Karen looked very healthy.
Yeah, you don't see anybody looking for
Right.
rations or
They
hoarding
do
food or
mention the
anything like that.
rations for like the ownership, but they're like double rations for you. So
Yay!
yeah, it's somehow, and
Maybe there's a North Alaskan glacier nearby that's
or
melting and they're
there's
getting
just
water
an
from that.
unlimited supply of Colt 45.
There you go.
That could be.
They got a good deal with the group down at the Colt 45 plant. They're just super
That
chill.
could be. That could be what's keeping the world alive. Colt 45.
Colt 45,
Colt 45, keeping the world alive. Hi,
keeping the world
I'm Billy D.
alive.
Williams, and this is Equalizer 2000. Now, I probably should have said this at the start, but this is not in any way a sequel to the Denzel Washington movies. Thank you. You did not miss number 4 through
Three.
1999. Don't worry, folks. This is completely different.
Phew.
All right.
It would take 100 years to get
It
caught up.
would. It would. Um,
And we'll be here to watch them all on the Bulletproof podcast.
Ryan Campbell's wrapping us up, but we've got more to talk about, including the YouTube channel, Ryan, because you know what? It's Richard Norton week, basically, because we're going to do from the archives, Chris. It was a heel Richard Norton in Gymkata.
Gymkata, a cult classic. You and I had talked about that a while back. Richard Norton up to some of his slimy best. So yeah, kind of a double tribute to the man. Please check out that past episode coming up on the Bulletproof Action YouTube channel, along with a film that you and I mean, I loved it. I know you enjoyed it. Uh, but we're going to be putting up the Fall Guy episode as well. Ryan Gosling and the Fall Guy.
Which is fitting because Richard Norton was a stuntman.
There you
Mhm.
go.
Doesn't it?
Yep,
Doesn't it
we'll be,
really make
putting up-
sense? Doesn't it give you a shudder of electricity when I come up with a schedule like that?
That's right. There's a plan for it all.
That's why we call you the
There's a
brain,
plan in everything.
the thinking man's movie reviewer.
Constantly thinking ahead.
But yeah, we've got that. Of course, social media. We want to thank everybody who did vote and got us to watch Equalizer 2000. You never know, we might be doing a poll again for another episode here or there. So we'd love to get your input, and you can hit us up on social media at Bulletproof Pod on X and on Blue Sky, and at Bulletproof Action on Facebook and Instagram. You know what else you could do? Is if you think there's a movie that has double-digit bastards, let us know over there on the social media. It could make the list over at Count the Bastards.
There you go. The elusive or exclusive list.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly growing.
Constantly.
Refining.
Mm-hmm. And you know, and I really, and I do on the page, but I have to also give props to Exploding Helicopter, because that was a part of the inspiration as well, because he does such a great job. Will does such a great job of tracking these movies. I'm like, I want to track something too, and I'm tracking Bastards. So again, that's over on bulletproofaction.com. Any final words, Ryan Campbell, before we wrap this baby up?
Nope. Just keep an eye out for Andor and Last of Us, please, if you would check those out. We're going to be getting into the blockbuster season, so we're going to be busy there. Head over to the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, drop some comments on stuff. We certainly appreciate it. It's building up some momentum, which is exciting to see, and we're happy that you're all going to be a part of it.
Back in Action did very well for us, so there you go.
It did. It kind of broke a little bit of a lull there, and that's one thing I love about YouTube is you really have no freaking clue what the heck's going to catch fire on there. Like I'll do videos for some other channels where I really think it through, and you put a lot of effort into the editing of it, and you think it's going to hit, and it just dies on the vine, and then some random thing you throw up there, catches fire. So you never know. So we thank you all for tuning in when you tune in, I guess I should say.
Toyman, any final words on your end?
Please, if you haven't already, check out the recent No Surrender Cinemas. Again, I covered Daredevil Born Again, the whole season. Angel of Destruction, also helmed by the man that we talked about here in Equalizer 2000, Cirio H. Santiago. Check out any of my past columns. Keep checking out the podcast. Check out the YouTube channel. We've got the special edition episode with John Cena Sr. talking about 12 rounds and John Cena Jr.'s film career. We've got the throwback episode with our buddy Chad Michael Collins talking about Sniper. Yep. And I don't know if you saw, but Sniper the Last Stand is hitting Netflix in May. So it sounds like a good podcast subject to me.
I did see that.
We might have to get on that.
I did see that. And I did want to mention that, so I'm glad you did. I forgot to put it in the notes, but there you go. This is why we're a team, folks. Always happy to talk CMC and support his films. So yeah, that very well could be among the May schedule of podcast. We shall find out. All right. I don't really have anything else, so I will say what I always say. I want to thank you all for listening, and as always, stay tuned for more of the Bulletproof Podcast.